Hello everybody, CritCrab here with another few stories. This first one about an annoying know-it-all's dramatic rage quit, never to be heard from again. But first, let's take a quick moment to thank today's sponsors, World Anvil. World Anvil is a fun, user-friendly set of tools that helps you create, organize, and store your world setting. World Anvil has every single tool you need to create and manage your campaign. You can turn imported maps into interactive maps, make use of tables and charts to design your world to a T, and share your world with a community of over 1.5 million world builders. But my favorite feature is that instead of needing to organize your campaign notes manually, let World Anvil take the reins for you. Write anything you want, stick a quick label on it, and then it will be added to your well-organized, low-maintenance compendium of knowledge. Then, whenever you need it, you can pull up the search bar and find it easily, keeping the game from slowing down when you need to find a piece of important information. World Anvil is great for DMing, but it can also be used by authors or any type of world builder. This type of versatility is why World Anvil is many GMs, myself included's, first choice. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below for 30% off any annual subscription. But if you don't have the money, that's okay because there's also a free version. That said, after this video, do click the link in the description. I'll see you there. Roll post. So, I'm a new DM along with my other friend. Let's call him DM1. I'll be DM2 since I was helping him out with running. 90% of people in the campaign we're doing are first-time players, so they have no idea about a lot of things since you don't have to know everything at level 1, right? Apparently not. There's this one player, we'll call them Monk. Monk had read all of the books and claimed they knew all of the rules, constantly debating the rules us DMs had set when it came to literally anything. They would backseat DM a fair few times in the session 0, so we sort of knew what they were like, but hoped that they would stop when it came to properly running. Sometimes players would come to us with questions like, can I use X spell for an X skill? And before we had even opened our mouths, Monk would immediately say no because XYZ reason and get annoyed if we said, well, that's true, but I'm sure we can sort something out for it. And they would get angry and say that we need to learn the difference between X and Y. We'd just be confused, honestly. They just could not accept the fact that some DMs change rules to suit the players and for flavor, etc. This session broke the straw on the camel's back, so to speak. So we're running Lost Mines of Phandelver, an easy starter campaign for any newbie. We get into the cave, and after crossing the river, the druid sent his wolf that he tamed in the cave to go check the next chamber. Unfortunately, the wolf did not return, so the party investigated, and found the wolf dead, and then heard heavy footsteps. Everyone rolled initiative. The 3 goblins were back, followed by Monk, NPC, Paladin, Bugbear, and Druid with his 2 wolves. We weren't sure how the goblins would attack, so we each picked a number out of 4 and rolled a d4. It landed on 1, so naturally the goblin attacked the monk. Landed a nat 20 to hit, even. Before we even said the next part, I kid you not, Monk was standing up, shouting and screaming, waving his arms around like he had been specifically targeted and were dead. Definitely was not dead though. Keep in mind, this is the first ever session for some people, so it was pretty scary, not gonna lie. We asked them firmly, but not aggressively, to please stop shouting and wait for the next part. Monk was having absolutely none of it. People who were playing D&D in the other room even heard the screaming and came in to see what was going on. They tried to calm him down, but to no avail. Monk carried on screaming and shouting and getting into people's faces. So we had to ask them to leave because we had said before the session that we would not be tolerating any of the behavior that they were showing. They ripped up their character sheet, yelled at everyone that they were assholes, and stomped off. Monk has still not apologized and has left all groups that they are in. On the bright side, we carried on with the session, after making sure everyone was okay after the incident. We had pizza. Pizza also helps. The more experienced players come from the other room, myself included, reassured the newer players that this wasn't a regular occurrence and that Monk will not be returning to the party. After all that, For the first time since starting, you could tell people started to enjoy themselves and that they were coming up with their own fun ideas that they couldn't have said without Monk breathing down their necks. It was nice to see that they were having fun despite the initial madness. My partner was also there to help us with some questions, and it was one of the experienced players. So that was our first proper session. Monk definitely will not be allowed back though. End post. This is one of those stories that's almost more humorous than anything else. This guy genuinely thought that he was so above everybody else that the slightest in-game occurrence made him fly off the handle in a rage. He's literally just one of those Minecraft Rage Kid videos from a couple of years ago. But with D&D on the rise, I suppose it's time for us to have D&D Rage Quit videos. So, this is that. Heavy humor, light horror. Next post. This is a story from my third ever game, a Darkside campaign using the Star Wars conversions for 3.5. This was my first game that wasn't 5e and happened about 4-ish years ago or so. Some of the details are fuzzy, so I'll just do my best. So the story had the 3 players, myself, a close friend we'll call Bean, and a coworker that we'll call Chubbs, and the DM who had been playing since the very first edition of D&D. Most of the campaign itself isn't that important, but I will give you a brief synopsis. The 3 of us were Jedi Knights during the events of the Mandalorian Wars, the one that turned Revan, and we fell to the dark side like so many others. We joined the Sith Empire and studied the ways of the dark side, going on missions to raid the outer territory of the Republic in preparation for the Sith invasion, eventually working our way up to becoming the apprentices of Revan, Malik, and an OC named Darth Philadius. Under their instruction, we each became immensely powerful, as one does, and the time of the Sith invasion had arrived. The 3 of us believed that together, with our cooperation and teamwork, uncommon traits among the Sith, we could defeat our masters who wouldn't have the same strengths. And so, we hatched a plan to overthrow them and usher in a new age for the Sith. But all was not as we believed, for myself and Bean stayed true to the plan, and Chubbs had betrayed us. So now we stood defiant, 2 against 4, in what might have been the most terrifying power struggle in Star Wars history if it were canon. We refused to back down, and so combat began. I wish I could say that combat was long and full of badass moments, but alas, I cannot tell a lie. The dice fell heavy and swift, and death was brought down like rods of tungsten from orbit. Both Bean and myself rolled perfectly, and under the rules of our game, meant near instant death. Within 3 rounds, only Bean, Chubbs, and myself were left, and Chubbs was disarmed and held at lightsaber point. Chubbs pleaded for mercy, and I, in the spirit of party and play, was willing to make amends. But Bean, a powerful Sith, now Sith Lord, had been betrayed by a close friend and lover, that's a whole different thing, and amends could not be made. And so Chubbs fell to the floor, the weight of a head lifted from their shoulders. Now, in real life, an argument broke out. Why did you kill me? You betrayed us. But that's what Sith do, and forgiveness is what Sith don't. But we're a party. You betrayed us. You weren't part of the party anymore, and that is exactly what my character would do. The words shook the room. It took a moment for Bean to understand what he had actually just said, what he had done. He had spoken the ancient words of folly and regret, but yet, the words weren't hollow defense, but rang out as viable reason. The weight they carried was felt like hammer blows. The curse of players past and yet to come was not bore that day, as for possibly the only time in history of all things were the accused words spoken and truly justified. Just a few last notes. We all remained friends and played more games together, only stopping when I moved away. There were never any hard feelings, as Chubbs did admit that the whole encounter and betrayal was on him and that Bean was justified in killing his character. We all, like any of you, despise the words, "but it's what my character would do." But sometimes, however rarely, it's true and fits. End post. The bad rep surrounding the "it's what my character would do" defense makes total sense. If it's something that you have to say out loud to deflect criticism, you're usually being a jerk and trying to hide behind roleplay to justify being a jerk. If you're doing something harsh but that your character would actually do, so long as it's not ruining the game, other players will not take issue, so you won't need to get into a debate. So to speak, there's nothing wrong with doing what your character would do, but if you're in a situation where you need to clarify that because everyone else is just that mad at you, a few mistakes were definitely made. This is an outlier, but you can tell that in time both parties came to an understanding. Light glory, mostly neutral. Alright, I think we have time for one more story, but I will warn you, I saved the worst for last. So, a quick content warning for those sensitive to topics including abuse, slut-shaming, sexual assault, violence, and manipulation. Roll post. Let me preface this by saying that my old DM and I were a couple before we played. She had sort of snatched me up via wearing me down and asking me out over and over when I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship until I had no idea how to say no. Okay, stop post real quick. If we can call a bit of a timeout here, I understand that it would be different if you were in this position, but for the people watching at home, this should immediately be taken as a huge red flag. If you say no and they persist, consider yourself smart for saying no in the first place because this is a really bad sign. Resume post. I felt very pressured this entire relationship, and she used my past trauma and history of being abused several times in and out of character to try and say that she couldn't possibly be abusing me because my ex was worse. She also tried to use the "but we're both trans" card to excuse her actions. Anyways, I was green. I had never been in a campaign before and had desperately wanted to get involved in TRPGs, and I told her this. Bad move. She suggested that she DM for me and a friend. The friend, this was a constant topic. The DM literally did not let us use any other characteristics and would not let her expand on her character. The same went for me. I played a half-elf bard, and he never got to be anything more than a stereotypical whore. That was his only use. He was mocked, powerless, especially so by the DM NPC that took a liking to him. I use the term liking very loosely. There was nothing healthy about this. Elf was forced to date this NPC, and regularly our adventures would be derailed because NPC is horny. He grabs Elf and drags him off. And he, oh no, does unspeakable things until he loses consciousness. I had no idea how to even begin to address this and was too afraid to call out this behavior as I was being abused by this DM and gaslit about it. This DM also would do the same to myself, literally mid-session. I would get dragged away from Molly, thrown on a oh no, oh, bad, no. It was demoralizing to say the least. We also never actually had a concrete goal. I'm fine with homebrew content, but DM never planned or prepared anything. Usually it was relegated to Orc hurting herself in her confusion, Elf attempting to attain any bit of affection or care from his indifferent and frankly abusive boyfriend, and being punished for being an embarrassment to said boyfriend, and the occasional cameo from DM's favorite creepypasta. There was also some weird fetish she felt she needed to include where my character's boyfriend forcibly pierced his nipples. This went on for about 6 months, and the campaign was dropped when I finally put my foot down and broke up with her. I'm now in a fantastic homebrew run by a good friend of mine, and Elf is now happily married to a paladin who fell in love with him and helped him to heal and come out of his shell. I did inform my new DM of the past experience I had, and last session I was finally able to have some closure in character and out. This was in the form of my character finding the corpse of my abuser's character and promptly incinerating it. TLDR, I date an abuser who abuses not only me, but also my character and my friend's character. I finally am able to move on and give my character a stable, loving relationship and a personality when I join a new campaign. End post. First, props to OP for leaving that relationship. It can be incredibly hard to leave bad relationships behind, even if there's no abuse or threat of abuse going on. There is a bit more context surrounding the breakup in the comments below though. Roll comment. Molly had been in an abusive marriage previously and was living with me, so I think she understood where I was coming from. She was also afraid to say anything, but ultimately was able to help me to build up confidence to break things off. I honestly think she stuck around the game with me as moral support, and really is a great person. She isn't in my current campaign, but is thoroughly enjoying herself in a new one too. End comment. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like these ones. Till next time.